The agent DNA is all about how to separate yourself out of the current experience that you're in and think about your business. So what we're going to start on here today is a little bit of a journey. It's going to take us at least 6 different classes to be able to get through, at least. To be able to get through the whole thing, we're probably going to do 1 to 2 classes per month. This is going to kind of lay the foundation for what your DNA as a business owner should look like. So this is more of an introduction class. I have no idea how long it's going to last. This has lasted me anywhere from 45 minutes on some presentations to 2 hours on others. So it depends on how we go. But basically, why you're here really sort of depends on your business, and it's primarily focused again on a service-based business. But if you are looking to scale, you're not thrilled with exactly where your current ceiling is, this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about why you've got a glass ceiling over your head and how you can break through that glass ceiling. So if you're happy with your current level of business, you might learn something. I encourage you to stay, but you're probably not going to learn or see exactly what this class was built for, because I want to show you where those limitations are and where you're thinking about your business wrong in a way that you can expand that business and begin to scale without adding hours to your life. So that's why you're here. What are we not going to discuss? And this is a little bit more important when I'm doing like a local event. For an agent DNA event, I'll get a lot of new agents in. So if you're new in the real estate space, what this class is not for is it's not going to teach you how to write contracts. We're not going to teach creative finance opportunities here. We do that with all the leads. We're not going to talk about how to win a listing in this class. That was a class a couple of weeks ago. We are mainly focused on one thing and one thing only through this series. There is one job that every CEO of a business has. One job and one job only. Profit and leadership and guidance are a symptom of the answer I'm looking for. And by the way, this is the number one job of a CEO according to Bruce, not everybody else. So not that I'm right or wrong, but I think that the top job of a CEO is to think. If a CEO is not thinking about their business, evaluating opportunities, evaluating changes and adjustments needed in their business, they're not going to get any of those symptoms that we've all brought up. They're not going to get the profit that they're looking for. They're not going to, I love the dog, Steve. They're not going to find the leadership abilities and skills that they're looking for without first being able to take a step back and think about their business. Here I was with the story that I was sharing with you guys, in a sleeping bag, thinking that my number one job was to insulate myself and stay warm, when my number one job was to really take a step outside of the sleeping bag and look at it from a slightly different perspective, which gave me the ability to make the small little adjustment of turning the sleeping bag around and going back to sleep. If I hadn't thought about it, I wouldn't have come up with the easy, simple solution that took me 3 seconds to solve. So our job as a CEO is to think. And so today, what we're going to talk about is how to think about your business. If you can think about your business the right way, you can scale, you can grow, you can take your business to the place that you want it to. So it's my belief that if your thinking is wrong, your business is wrong. How many of you have had problems with thinking the way that you think about your business, and you've recognized that and you've changed little things with the way that you're thinking about it that have made an impact? Anybody? All right. So if your thinking is wrong, your business is wrong. So I want to kind of tell you guys a little bit about how the agent DNA was born, how I came up with this class. For many years, even after being a successful agent, and those of you that don't know my story, my first year in real estate, let's start before real estate. Before I got into the real estate space, I was a college student. I studied religion and theology. I was going to be a pastor. Some of you are relating to me. Some of you are laughing at. Some of you know me, and you're like, "No way." Okay, so I was going to be a pastor. That didn't work out. I went and sold cars in Charlotte, North Carolina. That didn't work out. I moved to Charlotte without knowing a single person when I was 22, and I worked on a car lot thinking that that was where I was going to make my mark and make a living. 8 months later, my dad showed up with a cattle truck, because I grew up on a farm, with a cattle truck, and knocked on my door and said, "You're 3 months behind on your rent. You're failing down here. We've got to pack you up, and you're going back home, tail between your legs." Highly embarrassed. Highly embarrassed. All my friends were watching me load all my belongings into my dad's cattle truck that hadn't even been swept out to go home. So I failed at that. I sold furniture for a little bit. I wasn't any good at first year in real estate. I sold one house. Second year in real estate, I sold 3. If you were on the class earlier, the pre-probate foundations, you heard this. Third year in real estate, I sold 6, and then I had my breakthrough and sold over 150 houses my 4th year with a team, admittedly, but it's my team. So the idea here is that the agent DNA and the way that I look at business was all necessary. It was all necessary because I didn't walk into business with a natural gift. I had to learn how to think about business. And after developing a lot of business over quite a few years, between years 4 and the last year that I was heavily in production, I still would walk into networking events and meetings, and I would try to explain what I did based on my audience. And I would have people come up to me all the time and say, "Bruce, I didn't list my house with you because I thought you managed properties. Bruce, I didn't buy a house with you because I thought you were only a listing agent. Bruce, I didn't sell property with you because I thought that you only coached and trained. Bruce, I didn't hire you as a coach because I thought that you were only in production." And the issue that I was running into is I'd walk into a room and I'd try to match my DNA. I'd try to match my message to the individual that I was talking to at any given time. And I confused every single person who was looking at me from a distance. None of them knew what I did because I didn't present a consolidated, cohesive DNA that was recognizable to the audience that I was working with. And it was one day a few years ago that I was in a church service, and someone that I think the preacher said, and it might have just been a conversation that I overheard, I'm not sure. Someone said, if you're a Christian, is what they said. If you're a Christian, your DNA should be recognizable. If it's not recognizable to those around you, you don't have the right DNA. And a light went off in my head, and I said, that's been my problem in the real estate business. And this was even as a successful realtor. So I realized that had been my problem in the real estate business, is I was always putting out mixed messages, mixed signals. People didn't know whether I was a coach, a trainer, a property manager, a listing agent, a buyer's agent. They didn't know what it was that I did because I was constantly trying to spread out what I did. And I would say that there's many of you on here that are missing business because you're not presenting a cohesive, recognizable DNA to your world. That's how the agent DNA was born. About 7 or 8 years ago, and I know Winston Covington's going to appreciate this. So about 7 or 8 years ago, and I guess it's been longer than that, probably more like 10 years ago, I was I had a Fannie Mae contract and I had a HUD contract during the foreclosure days. And so about half of our business was coming from Fannie Mae and HUD. And that was the business that I was using to promote on social media. I was using to talk about what I did. And I was constantly pushing out the foreclosure and REO business and short sale business that we were doing. And I was focused pretty much exclusively in that space with my promotion and my marketing. So one day, my best friend who I'd grown up with, we were best friends since birth, basically, called me up and he said, Bruce, do you want to come over for dinner? So I agreed. He and his wife, Stacy, had invited us over for dinner, and they lived in the same town with us. We were really, really, really tight. And so I get in the car to go over to dinner. And when I pulled down their road, I looked in the distance toward their house and I saw the dreaded real estate sign. The dreaded real estate sign. And the first thing I thought is, Eric would never do that to me. Someone next door to Eric listed their house. And I'm going to get down here and see I wonder who's for sale. And as I get closer and closer and closer, I realized that the real estate sign was in Eric's yard. So the second thing that I thought as I realized that the sign was in Eric's yard was some listing agent had put their sign in the wrong yard. And honest to God, I really, really thought that someone had put their sign in the wrong yard, because there's no way that Eric's house is for sale because I didn't go on the listing appointment. So I get out of the car, everything's completely fine because obviously sign's just in the wrong yard. I go knock on the door. Eric comes to the door and I said, hey, who put their sign in the wrong yard? Where's that supposed to go? He said, oh no, we listed the house today. And his wife comes to the door and she said, yeah, isn't it wonderful? We're moving. We're going to move to this other side of town. We just put this house under contract. 2 transactions. Now I'm the best friend here. We have referred each other and used each other a lot. And I said, well, why didn't you call me? And he said, well, we went to an open house today and the agent said that she'd give us a deal if we bought and listed the house through her. And I said, you could have called me. I would have helped you out. And he said, oh, Bruce, you just do foreclosures. That's what he said, which, by the way, that was only 50% of my business at the time. And he said, oh, Bruce, you just do foreclosures. And I didn't realize it then, but knowing what I know now, that's because the image that I presented to the world was that of a REO agent. And if that's the only image that I was putting out to the world, why would someone want to do business with me in a non-REO environment? And the reason is because I wasn't pushing the correct DNA. I was not holding the image that I needed to hold to make myself and my business attractive to my audience. Okay. So hopefully you guys are kind of getting the sense that there were a lot of things that I was doing wrong. And all the while, these experiences were happening for me. By the way, that's one of my favorite quotes is life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. So these experiences were happening for me. My sleeping bag was turned the wrong way. I couldn't sell any cars and had to load my furniture into the back of my dad's cattle truck. I couldn't sell any furniture and almost went bankrupt. I sold one house my first year in real estate. My best friend listed a house without me and bought another one. All these things happened for me, and I didn't recognize that there was one single reason that I was getting these negative experiences in my life. And when it finally clicked, it clicked, and that's where this class was born. So what I want to do with you guys is kind of go through what your DNA is. What's your DNA? When you think of your own personal physical DNA, what is it? What does it mean to you and your life? What would you say? Physical DNA is made up of 5 molecules. So you've got 4 proteins that are surrounded by your double helix, and your double helix is just kind of what holds it all together. But it's really 5 different elements that your physical DNA is made out of. Okay. And those 5 elements are duplicated trillions and trillions and trillions of times over. Okay. And after those, that DNA is duplicated many, 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 many times, we get a picture of who you are. Okay. So it's 5 elements. The next thing that your physical DNA is it's the building structure of your life. Without the DNA that makes up you and us as people, then there's no life. We don't have life. Or if we do, if you change 1% of that DNA, you might be a completely different creature. We share most of our DNA with most of life on Earth. So much of our DNA is shared. The small little changes mean that we're a person instead of a dog. Okay, but DNA is the building structure of life. And then last is your DNA, and this is really what I'm going to get to. DNA is the clue that you leave behind with every physical interaction that you have. So if I am drinking water out of this glass and I'm holding this glass, my fingerprints have DNA on them. We have a unique fingerprint, and that fingerprint, when I set the glass down, and if you were to come along behind me and lift my fingerprint off of that, you would have some of my DNA. Or if some of my hair falls out, you could, a scientist could study it, and they could say, this is a man, this is a male. His eyes are green. He's Caucasian. Okay, this is the part of the world that he probably originated from. Okay, so there's multiple different things that they could determine from me, all off of a tiny little clue that I left behind by picking up a glass, touching a doorknob, or losing some of my hair. And I don't have a whole lot left to lose. So that every interaction that I have with the physical world leaves some of my DNA behind that leaves a clue as to who I am. And if I leave enough clues, behind, then a forensic scientist could figure out a lot of things about me. They could probably figure out who my family is, who my brother is. If he'd taken maybe a 33andMe test, they can figure a lot of things out if they have enough of my DNA that's left behind as a clue to follow the breadcrumbs. Anybody ever heard the quote, success leaves clues? Anybody ever heard that? It's one of my favorite quotes of all time. A lot of people attribute it to Tony Robbins. I think that he picked it up from someone else, so I don't know who the original author was of that quote. But success leaves clues. If you're going to be successful, you need to follow the clues, the bread trail of the people that you want to model that are successful. A lot of us spend all of our time looking at the successful person and saying, I want to be like them. And so we're staring at that person that we want to be like, when we shouldn't be looking at them. We should be looking at the clues that they leave behind with their interactions. So this is our physical DNA. You guys are going to recognize a lot of this. So let's switch over to our business DNA, because every single one of us has a business DNA. So you're going to recognize this. Your business DNA is also made up of 5 consistent molecules, the exact same as your physical DNA, identical, 5 consistent molecules. Your business DNA is the building structure of your business. So I should have changed this. So your business DNA is the building structure of your business. If you don't have the 5 molecules of your business DNA, you don't have anything to build off of. Okay. And when your business DNA is properly established and you understand what that DNA is, it becomes the clue that's left with every interaction. It becomes that thing that every time someone sees you, they recognize who you are, what you do, and how you can be relevant to their life. If you are in the real estate business, they recognize who you are, what you can do, how you can be relevant to their life with regard to real estate. If you install air conditioners, they recognize who you are, what you do, how you can be relevant to their life when they need an HVAC solution. All right, so this is what we want. If we're not getting business from the people that we know and we think they should be sending us business, it's because we haven't left enough clues. They might only be looking at a little pixel. I'm not going to do this right now, but I want everyone just in your mind to imagine something here. Imagine you're looking at a TV screen that's just a white TV screen. That's all it is it's a white TV screen. And then imagine that on that blank white screen, I throw a red dot or a red pixel onto the TV screen. And that pixel is one small little piece of a picture of me. Okay. But that pixel is just a small piece. And I point at that pixel and I say, see that red pixel there? What is that? You're not going to know what that is, because it's just one small interaction. So I put another pixel up. You still don't know what it is. So I put another pixel up. And after a while, I've put enough pixels onto the screen where someone can actually start to recognize, oh, Bruce, that's you. That's you. That's the way that we build our real estate business. We go out, we meet someone in our day-to-day life, or any business that you're running. You meet someone in your day-to-day life, and they say, what do you do? And you say, oh, I sell houses. And they say, okay, great. And then the next day they go and list their house. Do you get mad at them? Are you mad? No, because you just met them the day before and they've had one interaction with you, which is the equivalent of one clue that you've left behind, or one pixel on that television screen. Now, if it's your best friend named Eric and he calls you over and asks you to dinner, and you see a sign in his yard and he says, oh, I bought and sold a house with someone else, a competitor, maybe then you get a little bit mad. Or maybe then you take a step out of the sleeping bag and you look at your position and say, he did that because I was leaving the wrong clues. I didn't put enough pixels up onto the blank TV screen for my best friend to recognize how I could be relevant to his situation and his life. That's what I want to challenge you guys on. This is a different way of thinking. I see agents all the time that unfriend people that they're friends with. I see questions on Facebook. What happens if your best friend lists their house with someone else? And all these agents will come on and say, that's my past best friend. Or if they were really a friend, they would have supported your business. I'm going to say, if you really were presenting the correct business DNA to your friend and the people that knew you, they would use you. If they don't, it means someone else presented a more clear DNA than you. And that's your fault. And if it's your fault, we just need to take a step out of the sleeping bag and evaluate what our DNA looks like and how we're properly showing ourselves to the world. Have we put enough pixels onto the TV screen? Have we left enough clues? Are we leaving the right clues? Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys about those clues that you leave behind. And those clues are centered on these 5 DNA molecules that make up a DNA strand. All right. So what is your business DNA? What are some of the fundamental elements of a business? So number 1, if you're going to have a recognizable, growing, scalable business, you need an audience. So you've got to start with an audience. I deal with very frequently agents, some experienced, some inexperienced, who show up, and the first thing that I'll ask them is, how big is your sphere of influence? And it's amazing how often I hear about 15 people or about 20 people. And I would bet that there's a lot of people on this call that may say the same thing. But you've got to have a good, healthy audience. Okay, so your audience and I'm not going to put this on the slide, but write this down. So number one is you need to have a major concentration on growing your audience. Your audience is going to be divided into two categories. Number one is your connected audience. Connected audience. You know them, they know you. That's your sphere of influence. These are the people that you go to church with, that you go to social events with, that are your neighbors, your doctors, anyone that you are connected with in your sphere of influence. That's going to be number one. If you want to have a sustainable foundation to build off of, you need to get your audience to where your audience fulfills, your connected audience can fulfill your basic business needs. Okay. Out of your connected audience, guys, if you have 100 people in your connected audience, or 200 or 50, whatever it is, out of that, if you're doing a good job with your audience, and we're going to go deeper in this on future lessons, if you're doing a good job, you should get about 15% of your audience, of anyone in your connected audience, that uses or refers you in any given year. If you have 100 people and you only get one deal out of that 100 people that in your sphere of influence, that's 1%. You've got to fix some things. If you're getting 30 people, 30 pieces of business out of that connected audience, then you're doing a great job. I know agents. I've never been one of these agents, by the way, but I know agents that 60% of their connected audience, which is their sphere, uses or refers them on a yearly basis. Just imagine. You've got 100 people that you know, that you're friends with in your location, and you get 60 deals out of those 100 people. That would be amazing. I've never done that, but I know people who have. So that's your connected audience. You do not want to leave it at a connected audience, though. If you're doing a good job, the second type of audience that you need to start building and cultivating is your casual audience. So you've got a connected audience and a casual audience. Your casual audience are going to be people that might be on an email list. Maybe they're leads. Maybe they're people that have visited your website, or they see your marketing. There's a lot of people who watch you from afar. If you're in ATL, your probate audience could be your casual audience if you've marketed to them long enough. You don't know them, but they know you. If they called you and asked for business, you'd help them, but you really wouldn't. You'd have to go do a search to see if you can figure out who they are. So I want you guys to have a casual audience. In this room, show of hands, how many of you have known who I am for a while, but we've never met? Winston, we've met. Joyce, we've met. Zach, I feel like we've met. I might be wrong. There. Okay. So I've got some hands. Some of you are liars. I've met you. Okay. So I've got several of you on here that I haven't met, but you've known me because I do the training and all the leads, because I send some emails out. You guys have kind of followed me. And because of that, I've become credible to your business. Even if we've never interacted, even if I don't know who you are, I'm still credible and relevant to your business. And that leads to us working together in one way or the other. So when you think about your audience, I want you to think, I need a healthy, thriving, connected audience. And I need a healthy, thriving, and growing casual audience of people that don't know me, or that do know me. I don't know them. We haven't been personally introduced. So that's how we think about our audience. And that's how we're going to game plan your business. Is we're going to put steps together that grow both audiences to achieve the goals that you're looking for in your business. Okay. And wouldn't you know that Canva really messed my formatting up? I was supposed to, I actually did change these, but it didn't save. All right. Audience is number one. Message is number two. And by the way, I like to call this your narrative. So if this was saying what I meant it to say, this would say narrative. Your narrative is your talking points. Your narrative is the second fundamental core element in your business DNA. If you don't know how to talk about your business in an appealing and attractive way, you're not going to have the DNA that you're looking for. All right, let me give you an example of a bad narrative. My opinion only. I don't want to offend anyone, but I'm probably going to. All right, bad narrative. Hey, if you know anyone thinking about buying or selling houses, I'm never too busy for your referrals. I've heard that for many, 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 many years. I've known agents that every time they ever talk to anyone in their audience, they get that plug. It's a bad narrative. It's number one, it's forgettable. Number two is it gets kind of pushy when every time you interact with someone, you're constantly saying, I'm never too busy for your referrals. It's true, by the way. I'm not saying not to use that language, but that's a narrative that's just forgettable. So we need to have the certain language in our day-to-day life and in our interactions with our audience. So again, it all starts with audience. We need to have talking points and a narrative that appeals to them and makes us come off as credible to their life, as credible. To this day, I still lose business. I probably lost $40,000 worth of business a month or two ago to really good friends. And the reason is because my focus is as a coach, and they didn't think that I would be relevant to their life as home sellers in Raleigh. So they listed with someone else. And it's because I've intentionally built a brand around a trainer and a coach. And that's okay. It's okay that I lose business because I'm not intentionally building a real estate brand to help buyers and sellers anymore. Even though I hate losing the business, I have to recognize that my DNA that I've presented is just different now. If you are building your business as a listing or a buyer agent or both, you have to make sure that your DNA presented to your audience and with the proper narrative, make sure that people come to you and use you. If not, you either don't have a connected audience or you're not presenting the proper narrative when you talk to your people. All right, so everybody got that? Any questions on it? So we've got our narrative. Oh, by the way, here we go. All right, I told you guys, my DNA is not that of a slide builder. Right, it's clear. Technology is not in my DNA. So we've got our audience, our narrative. Number 3 is we've got to establish a brand. We have to establish a brand. A lot of you guys, as you were presenting, telling me some of the core elements of a business DNA, you talked about that message a little bit. You talked about the right words to say, but you have to also present a brand to the world. A brand is not necessarily your marketing. It's the TV screen that has enough pixels that are promoted, showing who you are and not who you are, not what you do, not what you do to make money, but how you're relevant to the people that you're talking to. So how are you relevant to them? Why do they need to be in your life? And it's not always because I'll help you sell your house for top dollar. They need to know that you're relevant. Has anyone here read the book Linchpin? Anybody ever read Linchpin? Great book, short, easy read, written by Seth Godin. And the idea of the book is that as a small business owner, your brand is that of being the small piece that connects everything together in their life. I've got a friend of mine locally named Stephen David Elliott. If you don't know Stephen David Elliott, you should follow him. He runs Rockstar Connect, the networking group that I've mentioned quite a few times on different trainings. And basically, Stephen David's that guy that even me, if I need anything locally, if I need a connection locally, I go ask Stephen. His real estate clients do the same thing. His business associates do the same thing. Anything that they need, they know that they can go to Stephen, and he's going to willingly give it with the narrative, back to narrative. With the narrative, hey, I'm really happy that I can help. Please let me know if there's anything that you need that's real estate related. Okay, so people know that he's helping for free, kind of in exchange, and he doesn't use these words, but kind of in exchange is his narrative for to be their real estate guy if they need real estate help. So his brand is that of a linchpin, and I'm going to argue that your brand should be that of a linchpin to your audience. So you see how these things all kind of start to interconnect here. You've got an audience that's following you. Your brand says that you're the person that they need to go to for whatever need that they have. They need a plumber, they come to you. They need an accountant, they come to you. They need real estate help, they come to you. Right? They come to you for all these different things, and all you're doing is just moving pieces around, dot connecting. And your narrative begins to teach them through the words that you say, begins to teach them how they can work with you and why you should be relevant to their life in the real estate space. Right? So when you think about your narrative, there's two different ways of delivering a narrative. So number one is face-to-face. You have a phone conversation or a face-to-face interaction with someone. You've got to have the right words to say. You have to be able to have some go-to structured statements that you can make or questions that you can ask that lead people to work with you. And I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples here. Examples that I've found, and these are go-to examples. Some people would call these scripted. If I go to an open house and somebody walks up, what's the first thing you guys ask? Those of you that do open houses, what's the first thing you ask, or one of the first things you ask when someone walks into the open house? Does anybody do open houses, by the way?
What brings you into the open house today?
What brings you in? Okay, good question. All right. And by the way, if you're not doing open houses, it's perfectly fine. Are you working with another agent? Joyce nailed it. Okay. I'm dead in the water. If somebody says, yes, I'm working with another agent, they could be lying through their teeth. And I'm kind of dead because I can't really, it's difficult to interfere in that relationship. Once someone has drawn that line in the sand, it's kind of hard to erase it. All right. So the direct conversational narrative here, as an example, instead of saying, are you working with another real estate agent? The narrative would be, how does this house compare to others you've been looking at? Okay. I switched from asking that question when I was doing open houses, are you working with a real estate agent? I'd get 90% of everyone that said yes. And I'd start to ask a little bit later in the tour, how's this compare to other houses you've been looking at? And all of a sudden, instead of 9 out of 10 people telling me that they had an agent, now 8 out of 10 people would tell me, oh, we just started looking. We haven't even looked at anything yet. Now I know, because I used the proper question and narrative, now I know that they don't have an agent. I didn't even have to give them a chance to lie to me. Okay, so I started changing my language. I started picking up business I'd never picked up before. Another example of narrative is you go to a listing appointment. And those of you that came to the listing class probably already know this. And the person says, you say, what are the 3 or 4 most important things to you in choosing the agent that you choose? And they say, I want the agent that charges the least commission. Now your narrative kicks in and you say, it sounds to me like the most important thing to you is the net that you put in your pocket. And they say, yes. That's a rehearsed and practiced narrative. So your narrative needs to be divided into 2 different categories. It needs to be questions, one-liners, statements that you use frequently. And you have those in your pocket. You can basically pull them out at any given point that you need those, because they're proven to get you business. They're proven to get you referrals. So that's part of your narrative, is that direct conversational narrative. The other part of your narrative is the part of your narrative that applies directly to your casual audience. That's your marketing narrative. So you guys need a marketing narrative, something that you consistently drip out on top of the people that you're working with. So we've got our audience. We've gone to work building our brand. promoting and making sure that more of those pixels and more of those clues are left behind for our audience. So how's the real estate market? And I've done this. Last time I did this, I think, I called on Derek a little bit ago. I'm not sure if he's got his microphone on, but last time I did this, I think Derek was in the room. Derek Wallace was in the room, and I had an attorney in the room as a sponsor. And I was just using this as an example of how your narrative needs to match the question, how's the real estate market? And I got the attorney to list a house with me and buy a house with me in 1 week. And it was not pre-planned. He was just there as a sponsor of the class. So I called the attorney and I said, hey, Brett, ask me how the real estate market is. And he said, hey, how's the real estate market, Bruce? And I said, great. Kind of really all depends on where you live. And you guys will notice I kind of stumble through that a little bit on purpose. So great. Kind of really depends on where you live. So what am I doing with that statement? Most of you would agree that that's a statement, right? It's great. It depends on where you live is a statement. What am I doing with it though?
Opening up conversation.
Doing what, Sherry?
Opening up conversation.
Opening up conversation. How so?
By presenting an introduction type.
Mm-hmm.
It just digs deeper into what they're thinking.
Yep. You are
He might just tell you where he lives.
Exactly. I made a statement and using NLP, and if you haven't studied it, study it. It's neuro-linguistic programming. Using NLP, I made my statement sound like a question. So great. It really kind of depends on where you live. So I raise the tone of my voice. And if I'm face to face with someone, I reach out with the back of my hand and I tap them on the shoulder like this. And it passes the conversation to them. Even though I haven't asked a question, their subconscious mind hears a question. And Brett said, oh, I live in the South Park area. And my response was, I love that area. How do you like it? And Brett said, unrehearsed, he said, it's okay. And my response was, what is there some hesitance there? And he said, yeah, I've just got a neighbor that I don't like a whole lot. Oh, how long have you had that neighbor? It's been years. Have you thought about doing anything about it? He said, well, as a matter of fact, my wife and I were kind of talking about maybe just moving because obviously he's not going to move. And I set an appointment for the next week in the class, and I went and listed his house and helped him buy another house. And since then, that attorney and I have done 7 or 8 deals together, all out of this particular interaction that we had. So these are just examples of specific pieces of language that you need to mix into your day-to-day life. And you guys need to study these or coach with someone or pick this stuff up that you can properly answer. How's the real estate market? You can properly handle when someone says, hey, I'm going to go with the agent with the lowest commission. You can properly handle the person that says that walks into the open house and figure out how you're going to find out if they're working with an agent. These narrative techniques are vital to you. Then we've got our marketing narrative. So are you marketing to your proper audience? So are you marketing to your audience, and are they seeing you, and are they getting the right message? Next is we're going to have, and I've got all kinds of issues here. Sorry, guys, my screen is just going crazy. So the next thing that we need is we need a DNA map. Your DNA map is your business plan. Right? If you don't have a plan to get where you want to go, you don't have goals, and you haven't figured out day-to-day needs to get to the end goal, then you're really kind of floating in the wind. All right. Maybe you have a predictable business, but it's on accident. So what I'm talking about with this map is you look at your big picture goal and you say, I want 100 transactions this year. Okay. So how many social media posts do you need weekly? How many sphere of influence phone calls do you need daily? How many events do you need to host every month? That's what I'm talking about with the map. It's one thing to have a big goal. It's another thing to break that goal down into baby steps that you can take on a day-to-day or a weekly basis. So you need a map. And by the way, guys, I know I'm teasing you with a lot of this stuff. The next classes are going to go much deeper into all of these. And then last is you need rituals. I had a handful of people that alluded to the word rituals just with different language when I was asking what needs to go into your DNA is rituals. How does your morning start? What are the non-negotiables in your life that you do not ever allow to be interfered with? What are some of your what are some of the non-negotiables that you're not going to allow anything to interfere with in your day? Do you have them? Okay, so your rituals, the reason that I put these as last on the slide, besides the fact that I don't know how to build a PowerPoint presentation, the reason I put these as last on the slide is because you should have daily or weekly rituals that relate to each one of these three categories of your DNA. If you don't have rituals that dictate how you engage with your audience, that dictate your practice, the practice of your narrative and your marketing delivery, and that dictate on a daily or weekly basis how you promote and present your brand, you're going to struggle. So these three things over here are what your rituals are made of. So as we go further along in the series, we're going to focus really heavily on your audience, your narrative, and your brand, and come up with rituals that allow you to focus on these three things every single day. And there are going to be, for Sherry and other of you, there are going to be rituals that are very much centered on your personal life as well. But these three need to be ritualized, and you need to make them as consistent as possible. Okay. Let me talk to you guys briefly about what's next. I told you I had no idea if this was going to be 45 minutes or 2 hours. Looks like it's going to be an hour and a half. So what's next is, once you guys looking at that, we're going to bust this. I'm going to pull the the scorecard over into my screen here in a second and walk through where you guys score on these. Some of you are going to score through the roof. You're going to decide, I already have my DNA pretty much ironed out. I don't need the class. By the way, there's no charge for the class. This is something that I'm offering. So any pitch that I give you is just to come back and try to plug in, go deeper on each of these steps. So what is next is I want you to go ahead and download the DNA scorecard. If you're on your phone and you can't get to the scorecard, I'll send it out in a recap email so that you can download the scorecard. Okay. I want you to take a step outside of your sleeping bag. Take a step outside of your business and look at it from a different angle and ask yourself, is the wind blowing into the top of my sleeping bag, making me cold for no good reason when I could just turn it around? So we're going to take a step out of your business. And I want you guys to remember that analogy forever. If something's not going according to plan, get a little bit of space, a little bit of distance from it, and ask yourself, is there a small adjustment that would make this problem either go away now or help me avoid the problem altogether in the future? So we're going to examine our business. And then last is just make sure that you're coming back for the Agent DNA class and getting plugged in, because we're going to go over in detail each one of these things. So in the next class, I think that we're going to talk about mapping. We're going to break apart where everyone's goals are. We're going to take a little bit of a workbook and decide if you want to sell X number of properties each year. What's that mean on a day-to-day basis? If you don't know your day-to-day, you're not going to get to your goal unless it's by accident. And I've accidentally hit plenty of goals. Don't get me wrong. You can accidentally hit a goal. You can't consistently and predictably hit a goal without breaking it down to the day. So the example of what we're going to do is we take someone that might want to hit 60 transactions this year, and we work it backwards and say, given a conversion rate of 3% of your audience, this is how many phone calls you need to make a day. And that number is normally 6 phone calls. And we're going to do that with different levels of business. So different spokes to your business. This is what we want from probate. This is what we want from our sphere of influence. This is what we want from our casual audience. This is what I want from circle prospecting, so to speak. Okay. And be able to kind of work through that process to figure out what your day-to-day rituals need to look like when it comes to communicating with that audience. And so that'll be the next class. Join me in the next class, and hopefully we'll start to see some growth in your businesses. Okay, guys, appreciate you all. See you soon.